Okay, welcome to Automation Hour. This is our 26th webinar series. All lines are muted. And if you have a question during the presentation, whether it's a question directly about what Jamie is presenting or a general process automation question, do use the chat function. And if we don't get to your question during the session, please continue that discussion on our Success Community Salesforce Automation Hour. And like with other sessions, we will be posting the recording as well as the deck available via the Success Community, via Twitter, and our website, automationhour.com. And this will be the third session in our current series where we're doing back-to-back 4 sessions for beginner, intermediate, and advanced. We've had pretty great feedback in terms of this beginner series and the speakers and the content. So looking forward to continuing that with the future sessions. And we want to give a special shout out to our sponsor, Concrete.io, for sponsoring this webinar series. And here are your hosts with me are David and Rakesh, and this was taken at Southeast Dreamin', and hopefully we're going to take another one at Dreamforce 17. And I also want to note that we have teamed up with a bunch of other podcasting groups, System.debug, to Wit, and a Gift Squad to form HungerCast, and we're selling t-shirts that have our specific podcasts or shows or groups, as well as there's a consolidated one with all of ours on the back. So the proceeds of this t-shirt do go to Feeding Texas. So all the relief funds go to the folks who were impacted by Hurricane Harvey. So I highly encourage you to go out there and donate to this worthy cause. And with that, this is going to be our third presenter on the beginning series. It's Jamie, and I will hand it over to her.
All right, here we go. Okay, hi everybody. I am Jamie Buck-Tomek. I work at a company called Foundation Source in Connecticut. I'm a certified Salesforce admin, and I will be presenting at Dreamforce this year. I also forgot to mention here, I guess, I'm the user group leader for the Stamford, Connecticut user group. So if you're in the area, I'd love for you to join us for one of our meetings. I do have a Twitter handle. I will say that I'm a little bit lapsed in that, but I definitely follow a lot of things. So, but don't hesitate to reach out because there's certainly not a lot of static that'll get in the way of you getting in touch with me. So feel free to do so. Amongst these accomplishments, I guess, I have one more that is fairly important, and that would be this little guy. He's 2.5, and he keeps me going when it's late at night and I'm working on stuff like presentations. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how to use what we call a button hack, and then later we're going to go into Process Builder to automatically update some activities to make reporting across, in our instance, leads and contacts a lot easier. So let's talk about activities. What are activities used for? Generally, they're used for tracking calls, emails, meetings, things of that nature that you want to have memorialized so that they can be referred to in the future. Also to track productivity of certain employees. Say you have an inside sales team who's making calls, you want them to log the call and what happened so that you can start to pull metrics on perhaps how many calls does it take to reach someone, or how many calls does it take to move an opportunity forward. And you're able to do that kind of thing because activities can be related to a variety of objects. In the related to field, you'll see in a minute, you can link to not only the person that you were speaking with, but the opportunity that it was about, or if it's just a general call about the account, you can put it there. And then you can start to pull those things together and really make some good decisions about where your sales team is spending their time. One of the issues, though, with the flexibility of activities is that it limits some of the information that you can get, especially if you are working with similar objects that you would consider to be related. So for instance, leads and contacts in my company are used almost interchangeably as far as the activities. You know, I'm calling somebody, I don't necessarily care if it's a lead or a contact. But from our process, leads are people that are being worked that we don't know what value they have for us yet. And when we do, then we will convert them to a contact and make an opportunity and add them to an account. So they are different, but a lot of times we want to see the activities related to them in one place. So it gets a little complicated, as you might imagine. You have a lot of different options when you are reporting on something like activities. You can report just across all activities, which a lot of times is fine. If you just want to know calls, doesn't matter if it's a lead or a contact, the task and events report type is perfect. If you want to get specific information, though, about that person, for instance, we have a field called sales region. You can't pull that in the normal tasks and events report. You can pull it in if you pull a report just of activities with contacts or just activities with leads, but that then makes it more difficult for people to get some pretty basic information. For example, how many calls were made to the New England region. Because as you'll see, when you go to make a report with just tasks and events, you see a very limited amount of information about the contact, and then anything that you want about the activity. So if you need to know what somebody's sales region is, you're not going to get it in this basic report. And what this ends up meaning is that you have to build two reports, and people have to basically do math in their head. And so I'll show you an example of that. Let's go here. So if I want to pull a report of activities and I want to look at my leads, it's easy enough. This report type is just activities with leads, and I have access to everything that I could want about the activity and then also about the lead. So that's not a problem. But I'm only getting half the story here. So I'll close out of this and I'll show you. Say I want to pull this information into a dashboard. Well, what happens is that I end up having to create two dashboards. So not a big deal if I want to know total activities. Okay, 4 and 4, not so bad. But as you start having more regions, like we do, we have 8 regions. And maybe you are starting to do over multiple months. Maybe you're breaking them out in some other way. It then starts to get a lot more complicated as far as getting that single number that you want that maybe your boss is asking you for. And it would certainly be nice to be able to just pull this dashboard, or even better, have them pull this dashboard and look at the numbers themselves. But this separation, at least for us, is a real barrier. So the question becomes, how do we address this? Some people might say, okay, well, go create a formula. The problem is with activities, because they're so flexible and because you can link them to so many different things, there isn't a tie, like a reliable way to navigate from the activity to a lead or an account or a campaign, whatever you have an activity linked to. It's just not there, which is unfortunate because you can do that with a lot of other objects. It's just that activities are special. So what's the solution? Well, let's go back to the presentation. And here. Well, our solution has been to put the information where you can get to it. That means having it all in one place on the activity. It might seem a little onerous. You know, are you repeating information? Yes and no. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. So one of the easiest ways to do this is to, of course, just add a field to your activities, such as the sales region. Okay, everybody goes in there, and all they have to do is click one more button and put in the sales region so that my boss can answer that question. Well, do that more than once, and you're going to get pretty frustrated, and so are your users. Also, they don't really probably know the sales region depending on how they're working together. So they might have to go back to the leader contact and look at the sales region and say, oh, okay, that's it. Let me go put it in. And for them, there's no value add. It's just a reporting thing for somebody else who's taking their time. So not only may they not do it, or if you require it, they might get aggravated, they might do it wrong. And they might put in the wrong, in this case, sales region. So how do we deal with that? Well, we have something called a button hack. And what a button hack can do is it can allow you to add information, pre-fill information, go to a different place than what a normal, log a call button, for instance, might do. And I have to say that this is one of the most powerful things that I have used beyond, of course, Process Builder and all that wonderful stuff, but to not only pre-fill information to make it easier for the user, but also to keep our data clean. So we're not relying on people to fill in this information for themselves. And again, the reason that we're doing this, that we're bothering to put the sales region on the activity, is because it is so difficult to pull information from leads and contacts at the same time. So we're doing it this way so that you can just go to a regular activity report and get this information. And for you, if you have a similar setup with leads and contacts, it could be any of a variety of things. Maybe the person is from a particular partner. You could pull that in. Maybe there is any of a number of other settings that you may want to put on a record automatically so that people don't have to worry about it. And this is one way that you can do that. And so what a button hack does is it allows you to adjust where a button actually goes and what it does. And I'll show you my example. But as you think about it, I'm sure that you'll think of other situations that you're running into where information isn't getting pulled in correctly. It doesn't have to be just on an activity. You could do a button hack for an email, and you could pre-populate the subject line of an email that's going out via, link to a lead or a contact or an account, something like that. So this is just one example, but I think it's a pretty good illustration of what's actually happening. So as you can see here, the yellow highlighted part is part of a URL. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, that's a web address. So you see it starts https:// and then there's the rest. The part in yellow is the part that we really care about. That's the part that changes all the time as you go throughout Salesforce or any other website. And what we're going to do is we're going to make some dynamic adjustments to that. And we need to understand the structure of that first before we start trying to build our own. So when you have a web address like this, you have a series of values, and there's equal signs, and there's ampersands. It looks Greek, but when you sit down and look at the components and you know what you're looking for, you can understand exactly what it's saying. And if you go to other websites and you see this kind of information there, you can also start to kind of understand how they're passing their information around. So this first piece of the link you see is called parameters. And so these are the things that you want to set. These are the things that you want to pre-fill for someone. So for instance, who ID, the number next to it, that's actually a lead ID. If you go to a lead record, you'll see that ID up in the address bar. And then there's a variety of other things that follow that, and we're going to adjust some of those. In green, in the line below, you'll see the other half of those parameters, the stuff in green. So the who ID is equal to a lead ID. That's the kind of the gobbledygook in green. And then I am setting things like what's the region? The region is Southern. What's the title, the subject basically of the task? It's call. And so all that stuff is going to come over, and then when we go to a task, it's going to automatically be there when we click on that button. So let's go take a look at a, come on. Oh, okay. Let's go take a look at a lead. Okay, so if you are a Family Guy fan, you'll be happy to know that Lois Griffin is in our database, and she works at the Quahog Brewing Company, and she just called in, and I want to log that call. Now, when you look at it here, go log a call, you're going to see that when it opens up, some of the information is filled out, and some of it is actually up here, the who ID, where we go when we're done. It's called the RET URL here. But the sales region isn't filled in, and I really want that filled in so that I can help with my reporting. So how do we do that? Well, what we do is we adjust the button that you see here on this related list, log a call. And what we're going to do is we are going to take a look at this button. So to get here, I went to Setup, and I went down to Customize and Activities. And there's all sorts of buttons and links that you can see here. So Tasks, Buttons, and Links. And let me just scroll up. I'm going to copy this real quick. Okay. And then I created a new button or link. There's a few options here. The label is what you're going to see. And so I have named them this way so that we know it's the button hack one. You want to say it's a list button, and any of these you can see it'll show you what the example is. So this isn't what we want, but here's an example. This is what we want. We want the one that's on the related list here. And I want to say display it without a sidebar or header because we want it to pop up just like it normally would for a task. And what are we giving it? We're giving it a URL. So you'll see here, this is what I copied from the page that we were just working on. And so let's go look at how we edit these IDs here and how we get in the information that we really want. So what's nice about this, it works just like any other formula field. So I look here and I say, all right, what is my who ID? Well, that's my lead or my contact, depending on where this button is going. And all I have to do is go here to lead and then find the ID, and it will insert that into the formula, as you'll see here. And when this button is on the page, it'll be able to pick this up. It'll know that it's there. If I were to put this button on a contact, it would have no idea what I was talking about. But that's why you would end up creating a separate button for contacts. But that's how it knows what it is, even though there's all sorts of other objects here. And then this is an important one, return URL. That just says where do I go when I'm done making this update. And you'll see this on all sorts of records throughout Salesforce as you work on them. And then the special field that I want to pass over is the sales region. So this is the one part, if you're not kind of confused or overwhelmed yet, this is the part that might be a little hard, which is how do I find out the name of the field that I want to update? So what you can do is you can, here, let's log a call. Right, okay. I have a particular plugin for Chrome, and there's the same one for Firefox as well. And it does all this web development related stuff. What we want to do is we're going to look at the form, and we're going to display form details. And okay, looks terrible, but if you know anything about HTML, it's just displaying the fields that are underneath what you see. And each field has an ID and it has a name. And the way that you tell Salesforce which item you want to, change in your URL is you look for the ID. So here, okay, I've got sales region. This is the ID. So when I go back to this one, you'll see that's, sorry, let's go to the next one. You'll see that this long string of characters is what is the field I want to update, and I want to do the sales region. So let's take a look at, well, let's actually save this. Okay. So once you save the button that you have created, that's all well and good, but it's not going to do anything until you add it to your page layout. So we're going to go here, and I'm going to edit my page layout. So if you have worked with page layouts, what you do is you come back to Setup, and you go to the Customize area again, and now I am going to edit the page layout of contacts. We were just working with leads, but it's the same process once you create the button. So I go to the page layout, I clicked on it, I click on the one that I want to edit, which right now is just this one, and I scroll down to where I have my activity history. And so you click on the wrench, and then you go here to buttons, and these are the standard buttons that you have. Usually if you're putting in a new one, you will uncheck the default one, but I want us to see both of them in action, so I have them here. This might be confusing. You see log a call, log call. The one thing that is confusing with that when you do buttons on activities is that they're all in the same list, whether it's related to a contact or a lead or an account or opportunity. And you can't name them the same because then you couldn't tell them apart. So my trick is that I use A with one of them and I don't in the other, just as one way of distinguishing. So I've decided that all of my lead buttons will say log a call, log a meeting, et cetera, and all of my contact buttons just say log call, log meeting. It's subtle. I'm hoping my users don't really notice, and it just makes it easier for me to find the button that I actually want to add to the page. And once you do that, you click Save. And then we'll go take a look at that button. Okay, so I'm on Sally Salesforce. She's from a fine company. She called me. I want to log a call. Let's see, her sales region is the Midwest. And so let's see what happens. I hit log a call. Now this is the old way of doing it. So we're just confirming that, hey, all right, no sales region filled out. I guess I have to remember, I picked New England. That's actually not the right one. I hit save. You know, that's not so great. So let's try the new button. The new button here, log a call BH, log a call button hack. So when I click on it, let's take a look up here. Okay, got the right lead. I know where I want to go when I'm done. And then this ugly name for the sales region field is here. And then look, it pulled in Midwest. And as you'll see down here, it says Midwest. So other things that you could do if you wanted to automatically set the due date maybe to 5 days from now. If there's a certain type of task that is always created in like 5 days out, you could do that this way too, because in the button that we were just looking at, since it works like any other formula, you could do a calculation on the date and then pass that through here and have it set. You could do that to maybe help people not put it on a weekend, make sure that it's a weekday. You could set another field perhaps, or even set the status to something else. Like if people are forgetting to set the status to in process, you could automatically do that if there's certain tasks that are like that. You could also automatically fill in some comments. Maybe it's a standardized way of entering information in here, like if you always start your comments with the user's initials dash date dash whatever, you could put that in here too. A little trickier, but definitely possible. So this is great. I've got the Midwest filled out already, and I don't have to do it myself. So anything I don't have to do myself, I'm very happy with. So I'm going to hit save. And what you'll see is for this one, I've got the sales region filled in. So that's exciting. I've got one of those things filled in. But we have another issue to think about. So let's go back to our presentation. Okay. So here is an example of, so you can see it up close, what we ended up doing. We did a lead ID, put the lead ID here, put the sales region there, and that's all we changed. The rest is what is standard. But here's the problem. Okay, that's great. I filled it in on that task, and like all the tasks that come after it will have that. Say you implement this, years after you've started using Salesforce, and there's all sorts of other tasks that aren't updated. You can certainly do that with a data loader to get all that stuff up to date. But what about when information changes? So this is where we get into Process Builder. And one of the really fun features about Process Builder is that you can update related records for someone. So if you're on an account and you have a bunch of opportunities, you can update all of the opportunities with a piece of information. Maybe that's lead source, or maybe that is account status, something along those lines. If that is difficult for you to report on, or you just prefer to have it also on the opportunity, you can use Process Builder to do that. And in this case, we're going to be doing that on activities because we specifically want to keep this information in sync and on the activities, so that when we're reporting on our leads and contacts, we are able to get all the information into one place. All right, so let's go give that a shot. All right. So how do I get to Process Builder? What is Process Builder? Well, I'll show you how to get there first, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more. One of the neatest updates that they've made in a while to this whole setup area, and this is not that recent, but they allowed you to search for within this long, long list of things for what you're looking for. So as you can see, there's other things that have the word process in them, but we're looking for Process Builder, and so we click here. Oops, sorry. One more time. Okay. So when you get to Process Builder, you have a list of all the processes that you've built so far. When you first come in here, if you're someone who suffers from writer's block, it might make you a little anxious because it is blank. It has some directions, but they don't provide examples right in this specific area that are already built out that you can kind of futz with. But all you have to do to get past that is click the New button and start your own first Process Builder. So what is Process Builder? Why are we using it? Process Builder is like workflows on steroids. If you've worked with workflows for a long time, you know that they can do a lot of cool things, but they're a bit simplistic. So for instance, if I want to do more than, if I want to make an update, for instance, based on owner and set the region, in workflow, I'd have to do an individual workflow for each one of those things because it doesn't handle or at all, really. And that's one of the big things that Process Builder does. It gives you more flexibility, like a tree, like a decision tree, to do different things depending on certain circumstances and do it all in one place. With workflows, there's a limit, and you can start to hit that depending on how complicated your updates are, or at least how many different things you're updating if you have to create a new workflow every time. So Process Builder is one way to consolidate that. There are limits on Process Builders too, but you can do so much more with them that it's much harder to reach that limit. So you can do a lot of other things in Process Builder as well, things that you can't do in a workflow. You can trigger a flow. You can send information to a piece of Apex code and have that perform something. For instance, there's a vendor that I work with, and I want to do some kind of more complex things than what they have built in their interface. And so what they did is they added something to Process Builder that, like their piece of their Apex code, that I could then go in and just send a couple of arguments to. I could say, okay, I'm looking for everything in New York and everything that is closed, whatever. And I'm able to do that because with Process Builder, they can give me particular access to one of their more complex things without having to build this whole interface around it. So that was really cool, and we were able to do that. So, all right, I've been talking about decision trees and all the fun stuff it can do, so let's actually create a new one. Okay, first thing is the name. So I'm going to say update sales region, just leave it at that. I think I have one already, so I'm going to do that. Descriptions are always helpful. Let's put a basic one in there. And then you have the option to do it when a record changes, which is, I think, a vast majority of when you're going to use this. When the opportunity stage goes from prospect to proposal, do something, that's a record change. When an owner changes from one region to another, that's an update. When it's invoked by another process, that's when something like, I'm not sure if a flow can do it, but I think a process builder can call another process builder. And that's what that second one is for. So I just want to do it when a record changes, don't have any complex needs there. And I hit save. So now you have this nice diagram of your process. You could theoretically think of a workflow the same way. They just don't build out the interface, and there's more to it than this. But what you want to start with first is, what is the object that is going to change? So in my case, something is going to change on the contact. I'm going to change the contact's sales region, for instance. So let's find contacts. Great. You have this option to only execute when something's created, which definitely has its place, or when a record is created or edited. And you can actually build out criteria to handle just the is created part in your process builder if you want. And then there is this option to allow the process to evaluate it multiple times. I almost never have to do this except in a couple of very unique circumstances where it needed to be done, but almost always you'll leave this blank. So I'm going to click Save. Once you pick your object, and once you pick your object, you have picked your object. That's it. So choose wisely, or you can always just create a new one. Not a big deal. And then what you're going to do is you're going to start to build out the instructions for the process builder. You want to tell it when something happens, do something. Otherwise, if this other thing happens, do something, and so on and so forth until you get to the end and you just leave it at stop. And you may have a lot of process builders that only are one decision, yes or no, either do it or get out of here. And that's what this one is going to be. But there's so many other options for what you can do. So right here, I'm just going to add a piece of basic criteria. And that is that the sales region on my contact has changed. Okay, great. You have several different options here. For me, I don't need a formula right now because I'm able to get the criteria just by picking fields. So you do have the option to enter a formula if you'd like. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to find the field on the contact. I'm talking about the contact. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for when it has changed. So they have all of these different options here, but is null and is changed are interesting because all you have to do is pick true or false. I said it's changed, great. That's the only condition I have. You can set it to only execute the actions when specified changes are made to the record. So it's not executing every time. Maybe if it's only execute if the sales region is changed to blank, so it doesn't check every time, that saves processing. In this case, is changed pretty much guarantees that it's only going to happen, at that particular moment. So I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to tell it what to do. And what I want it to do is I want it to update some records. A lot of times, you're just updating the record itself, the contact itself. But here's the cool part. So I'm going to give it a name here. But here's the option you have. Yes, I can select the contact that started this process, but I can also select a record related to the contact. What do I want to update? I want to update tasks. Okay, awesome. Now, I could set it to only update certain tasks. It's not really relevant in this situation, but for instance, if you were making an update and you only wanted to update calls, you could do that here, or only calls within the last year. For me, I want to update all of my tasks to have the new sales region. So now I'm looking at the fields for the task that I want to update. You'll see these are different. These aren't like the contact fields. They have call type and priority and things of that nature. I'm going to hit sales region. And then I could just set it to some value, but that's not what we want to do, and that's not going to help us. So what you can do is you can hit reference. And now you don't have to create an option for each possible sales region. All I have to do is go look at the contact and find its sales region, because that's the one that's defining what the sales region is for these tasks. So I hit save, and then what's going to happen is anytime a contact has its sales region changed, we're going to update all of the tasks with the value for sales region on that contact. And that will keep them all in sync, and that will make sure that our reporting is accurate. So when you have your process builder like this all ready to go, you can hit activate. And I have already done that on another one, so I'm just going to go back and show you it in action. All right, so we've got Sally Salesforce. She's in Southington, Connecticut. And last time I checked, that's not part of the Midwest. So let's take this and set it to New England, which is the appropriate setting. So I'm going to hit save, and then ta-da! Sales region down here has now been changed to New England on all of these records. I could change it again. I could change it to Southern, just for the heck of it. And I click save, and there we go. They're all Southern. So it's a very unique situation, but it really helps us with reporting across these two objects. So let's go back to this dashboard. Now here is one report that is made just off of tasks and events. And previously, there was no sales region information because it resided on the contact and the lead. But we added a field to our activities, and we created two different ways for it to get populated. And now when I hit refresh, it's going to update, and you will see that it now has some sales region information. We'd have to go back to all the other people in here and update their sales region. But so we have Sally's 4 activities listed as Southern, and then the rest we'll fix later. But now it's one chart. Everybody can see what's happening across all the different regions without having to add things together. You'll see this also updated to Southern. But again, you would have had to add those all together, and that's no fun. So one last thing to consider before things get real crazy is that with this process builder, I have something that every time the sales region on the contact changes, change all of the tasks. Well, what if I started one level higher and I said, what if the sales region on the account changes and I wanted to change everywhere else too? Well, you can build a process builder that does one part, which is if I update the sales region on my account, update all of my contacts. So that's great. Sally's record will get updated if I change that to on her account to a different region. But because this is updating contacts and it's making contacts have a sales region that is changed, the process builder that we just built will also get triggered. So now it will change all the tasks. So it's a neat little cascading process, and that's kind of why I had the waterfall there on that slide. And so I'll show you it in action. All right, so Midwest, I think we had them all set to Southern. Now, why don't we choose Northern Pacific? Okay, so I'm going to change that, but let's look down here. We see Sally is set to something else. I'm going to hit save. Okay, Sally's Northern Pacific. That's great. That process builder worked. But then guess what? The other process builder then fired and did all of these. So definitely a lot of possibilities. You can use this a bunch of different ways. Another reason that I have used cascading updates like this before is sometimes if you have a hierarchy of information, like say, you have a partner and you are grouping people by that, the formulas that you build to try to go all the way up to the account and find out like which partner are they can get really big. And so it just may not be worth it. And so in my company, what we've done is we've done this exact thing where we have decided, okay, those formulas just don't work, and there's a variety of other benefits as well. But we decided let's just put it on all these records, and to make sure that it all stays in sync, if the partner changes on the account level, it updates all of the contacts, it updates all of their tasks, it can update all of their opportunities. It's pretty wild and it's pretty cool. So with that, I guess I'd like to open it up to questions.
right. A bunch of people wanted to know the Chrome extension that you use. They missed that piece.
Yeah, it's called Web Developer. It's just straight Web Developer. And you have to remember to put it up here so that you click on it. But then it gives you all sorts of stuff that you can do. For instance, if I do this, I could, usually you can like kind of box in the information, like create a box around different stuff. But it's pretty neat. If you're doing any kind of other web development, it has a lot of helpful tools. And if you don't know how to get extensions, I can show you. You go here, more tools, extensions, and then when you scroll down to the bottom, get more extensions, and then it takes you to a place where you can search for all sorts of stuff. And I would actually search Salesforce here. I have so many really useful Salesforce plugins. This one, for instance, displays the API names on the page directly. This one allows me to log in as people without having to navigate to users and things like that. I use these two constantly. And you should be able to find them by searching those kind of things like Salesforce login as or Salesforce API names and find them.
Okay, let me look through the questions. There's a question from Jolene. Can this populate the standard name field in the object?
I believe so, yeah. I don't think there would be any reason not to, as long as you can get to the, you know, the ID of the field. You can pre-populate it.
Okay, and the next question is, in the first example for button hack, how is this more useful than defining a default value on the sales region field?
A default value on the sales region field. Well, because it changes like person to person, like lead contact. So that's an interesting thought. I would think you'd have to define it on the activity, and the activity, again, it can't really reach and get information on the leads and the contacts. I definitely tried to avoid a button hack for sure, but there's just so much that you cannot get to from activities, and so I had to do it this way. And so I'm pretty sure that the formula wouldn't work if you tried to do it that way for the default value.
Okay. Going to give people a couple minutes to ask any additional questions. We did see a few questions about the button hack and having it work in Lightning, so we have answered those questions that you can use URL hacks in Lightning. Those are now supported.
Oh, great. Yeah. That's really nice.
Okay. If anyone's typing in a question.
It better be awesome because we're totally waiting for it. So.
I know initially you couldn't, so I think Shauna Wolverton has heard us loud and clear.
Yeah, I think it was either the first and second, or at least the first one, that there were no supported hacks, and I think the last release they came out with the report URL hack being
cool,
supported
yeah.
in Lightning. So I think really yes, not everything was initially supported, but I think the biggest thing they said they weren't going to support that probably just wasn't messaged very clearly at first, because I know I was confused by it, is the JavaScript piece, where they're locking that piece down.
Yeah.
But if you're doing just a regular URL like you demoed today, where you're passing in parameters that way, then it will be something that Salesforce will continue to support.
Yeah, we definitely, and that's a good answer because I was curious about that because we do use some JavaScript with our buttons, and so we're still in Classic. You know, I'm sorry to say, but so thinking about how to replicate some of that is going to be tricky, but we'll see. You never know.
All right, I don't see any additional questions, so I think we're going to close 8 minutes early. So thank you so much, Jamie, for going through and showing us the URL hack and then also how to automate activities. And if anyone has any other questions, do post them on the Success community and we'll take a look after.
Great.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.